Welcome back to another Ret Paladin video. Varaben here. Today we are going to be looking at the first draft of the Dragonflight Ret Paladin talents. I'm really excited about these. We're going to do a really quick overview of all of the talents, kind of my take on them, and then we're going to do a deep dive into all of the different talents. So stick around. Let's take a look. Alright, so over here on the talent trees, and the first thing I wanted to point out with these talent trees, and this is true for almost all the different talent trees as well, is that all the stuff at the top, especially the first like 3 rows, even the first 4 rows, all of this stuff is basically baseline skills. And what I think a lot of content creators are missing is that, at level 11, you're going to have basically what you would normally have at level 11 right now. And so it doesn't take that many levels for you to get down here and get Divine Storm, which you're getting way sooner. You're getting Art of War and Divine Storm at level 15, which is earlier than you would normally get them right now. So I think that it's okay for all this stuff to kind of be talents. We're calling them talents. It's not the same as the talents. I think we're just kind of using different words, right? To mean the same thing. So, you're getting Divine Steed at level 14, you're getting Devotion Aura at level 14, you're getting Blinding Light at level 16, so you're getting a lot of really strong talents at the top. And so I think that's interesting. The other thing is that obviously these talents are still in process, right? These are in draft. We're in alpha. This is the first draft. What you're going to see in the talents when we look through them is that a lot of this stuff is basically just the legendaries and the conduits and the current talents and the current passes, and they just mushed it all together. So it's not like it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of thought put into what the talent trees look like for a lot of the classes. There are definitely some meaningful choices that you're going to make, as we see. But the thing that I think is really cool about the talent trees is that when you start looking at them, there's going to be situations where you can actually get the same talent that you have to make choices on right now. And I'm going to give you an example of that in just a second, where right now you have to make a choice between these 3 talents, but in the new talent trees you can get all 3 of those talents. So that's really, really cool. And right now, let's look at an example of that. So when you look at the level the level 25 talents, you can pick between Fires of Justice, Blade of Wrath, or Empyrean Power. Now most of the time you're going to take Blade of Wrath for single target and for PvP, and maybe for M+, you're probably going to be taking Empyrean Power. But in the current, but you have to pick between those 3, right? But in the new talent trees, you'll be able to get Blade of Wrath right here, and we're just going to kind of fill in some of these to show you. You're going to get Blade of Wrath, and then right below it, you can pick between Fires of Justice or Empyrean Power. So right away, we're going to be seeing a lot more variety in the types of talents and things that we're going to get, and getting Blade of Wrath and getting Empyrean Power is going to be really, really strong for Ret. So that's just one example of a time where you're going to get to choose between these things, and I think that's really interesting. Another really cool thing that's happening is that we're getting sort of borrowed talents from other specs. So the example of that down here is a really, really interesting one, is Blessing of Spell Warding. Now it's going to replace Blessing of Protection. It's going to be on a 3-minute cooldown instead of 5 minutes, so that's really interesting. And it's very deep down in the tree, but you're going to get a 10-second immunity. Now my guess is that immunity is going to be reduced, that the duration of that's going to get reduced in PvP, but those are all tuning changes and number changes and things like that we'll have to see. But the point is, you're going to be getting a second magic immunity. We're going to still have Bubble. It's a baseline paladin ability, and then you're also going to be able to get Blessing of Spell Warding. So that's a really, really cool thing, that we're going to be able to get these talents that were traditionally in other specs, and we don't see a whole lot of those, but that's definitely a cool one that we're going to get there. So. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the deep dive into the talent tree. So on the left side, you can see you've got the Paladin talent tree. So these are the talents that all the Paladins have access to, and I'm not going to go line by line in all of these. So hopefully you're familiar enough with the Paladin talent trees or the Paladin skills that you know what these icons mean. You know that this is Blessing of Freedom. You know you're going to take that every time. You know you're going to take Divine Steed every time. So I'm going to point out some things that I think are interesting, some things that are good, and some things that are not so good, and kind of just like the general overview of what the talent looks like. So first off, you're going to get access to Divine Steed and Cavalier and Seasoned Warhorse. That's the conduit there. But for 4 points, it's really expensive to get 2 charges on it and to get the duration increased by 2 seconds. I don't know, especially to Seasoned Warhorse, I don't know that that's worth the 2 talents. We'll just have to see. The way that the talent tree is kind of situated is that the left side is more like healing, kind of support talents, and then the middle is sort of prot talents a little bit, and then the right side there's a lot of damage dealing talents, and some of them are ones that we've seen before. Some of them are really boring kind of passive talents, like these talents are just increased armor and critical strike chance or increased haste, which are fine. That's cool to get. I want the haste, but it's not really, it doesn't seem like it's really worth a talent point. But the other cool things that you're going to see is, Prot Paladins and Holy Paladins and Red are all going to get access to Rebuke. You're going to get access to an interrupt now. Whether a Holy Paladin is really going to use that interrupt, I don't know. They might. In M+ or rating, you might be close enough to use an interrupt, but in PvP, you're probably not going to be close enough to use that interrupt, but it's still kind of cool. You do have to talent to turn evil. There's one talent that we kind of saw got data mine that has to do with, it increases the range of some of our abilities when you're under Crusader Aura or Charger. That's kind of an odd one. I don't know how useful that's really going to be. Again, it's probably not worth the talent point. There's some that are really good here that look like they're mandatory for Ret. One's like a Seal of Reprisal, where you just do 20% more damage on your Holy Power spending abilities. Obviously, 100% going to take that talent. And then there's ones like this that are passive, just 2% speed and avoidance. That's kind of a throwaway talent. It's kind of a trash talent, to be honest. But then you can see here we're going to get to choose between Holy Avenger and Divine Purpose. So if we look back at the old tree, on that level, it was Divine Purpose, Holy Avenger, and Seraphim. And if you look later on down in the Dragonflight talent tree, you're actually going to get to choose between Sanctified Wrath and Seraphim. So you actually can pick Seraphim and Divine Purpose, or Divine Purpose and Sanctified Wrath. So that's going to be really interesting. An interesting choice there. There's not a whole lot of other interesting kind of choices. One of the two sort of different modes that you're going to see, and you don't really have to do either of these with Ret, but you could choose to kind of focus more on a judgment-based talent set. So you can look at ones like Divine Toll, which is going to continue to be available to all Ret Paladins. It's the Kyrian ability. And then the Divine Resonance, which is the legendary that's associated with that. So that's kind of interesting that you still have that. So there's that, and then there's some other judgment talents that are gonna kind of synergize with it, as far as causing our judgment to cleave and things like that. So that's gonna be kind of interesting. There's another couple over here where every third judgment increases your holy damage by 4%. So that's kind of interesting. And when you combine that with Divine Toll, obviously each of those is going to be casting a lot of judgments, and so it's going to increase your holy damage. It doesn't say if it stacks. Hopefully it stacks. We'll have to see. And then there's another one where every third successful judgment has a 15% increased critical strike chance and deal a little bit of extra damage. So you can see there's some that are focused on increasing that judgment damage. And then one of the other things that you're going to see is that there's a few talents that are going to increase our consecration damage and kind of the range of consecration and how we get consecration. And I have a feeling that this is going to be a little bit of a meme, just because consecration doesn't do any damage right now. It does a few hundred damage per second, which is okay, and if you have a free GCD, you're going to take that. But I just don't know that it feels like there's going to be a lot of talents that you have to take to make it worthwhile, and I'll kind of show you what that consecration build looks like in a minute. But one of the kind of cool things that it's associated with that consecration talent build is that Blade of Justice. When you cast Blade of Justice from Art of War, it's going to put down a consecration. Now, it has its own consecration limit. So what that means is that you can get a consecration from Art of War, and then you can place another consecration, so you can actually double up. And that's going to be kind of interesting. Obviously, double consecration is going to be better than one consecration, but it's RNG based, so I don't love that. But you're going to be getting the Blade of Wrath, which means you get more often. You're going to get Blade of Justice procs. So I think it's going to be okay. It's going to depend on how consecration is, how the numbers go. And obviously in PvP, I don't know that this is going to make any sort of sense, because everybody's always moving around. And even if you could beef up consecration to even do a couple thousand damage per second or something, even if you had two of those, it could be pretty good, but you got to hold somebody in place. So I don't know how useful that's really going to be. But again, we actually get this Consecrated Ground talent, which is a PvP talent from Protection. You can see right there, the talent actually says requires Paladin Protection, because it's a PvP talent, but that's going to reduce their range by 50%, or I'm sorry, their movement speed by 50%. And so you can see some of these synergies lining up, right? Where when someone's running away from me, like in PvP, I can hit them with an Art of War, Blade of Justice, and that will slow them down. It's going to put a snare on the ground. It's going to be a bigger consecrate snare. It's going to do a little bit of damage, and it's going to snare them. It's going to break CC. It's going to do all kinds of other things that you might not want it to do. So I don't know if it's going to be something you want to take. Like I said, I think it's going to depend on your specs and things like that. But yeah, so I think that consecration, and then over here we get access to Golden Path and then Seal of Mercy, and these are kind of more consecration increasing talents where it's gonna consecration is gonna heal a little bit, and then it's also going to Seal of Mercy increases kind of like it says it attacks an additional time to the lowest health ally and the enemy. So I think it's just going to be sort of like a crit. It's like it's going to do an additional time. Another thing that you can get with consecration, I forget where it is. Let's see if we can find it. Oh, here it is. So sanctification. So consecration's periodic damage has a chance to grant you 1 holy power. So again, you could potentially have two consecrates going up at the same time, and then each of those are going to potentially generate 1 holy power. Now, we don't know what that chance is. We don't know if there's an internal cooldown. We don't really know what that looks like, but it could potentially, you could see a situation where you've got 2 consecrates on the ground and it's constantly feeding you holy power, and you just divine storm over and over again on AoE. So it could be really, really strong, especially if consecrate's doing a lot of damage. But again, depends on the tuning, and it's going to take a lot of talent points to kind of make that work. So I think we'll just have to see how that's tuned, but I'm interested. I think it's cool. I think it's an interesting way to play. So we'll have to kind of see how that plays out. I'm really happy to see Final Verdict is going to continue to be here. It's way down deep in the tree. I don't know if it's really that good, and it's also buried behind Relentless Inquisitor and Vanguard's Momentum. So those are 2 legendaries. So you're really, to get Final Verdict, you have to get 2 other legendary abilities from Shadowlands, and these are decent legendary abilities, honestly. But it's just that they're buried kind of deep down here, and there's also other really good things at the bottom. Another one that's really good is the Ashes to Ashes. This is where you get the Seraphim procs from Art of War, so that's really good. That's part of the set bonus from in Shadowlands right now. So obviously that's really strong. That's going to be a strong talent for us, but you're not really going to be able to go down here and take Ashes to Ashes and take Final Verdict. So there's going to be some tough decisions that we have to make. But the cool thing is that there's going to be loadouts that you can do where you're probably not going to be able to change them, like an M+, or maybe even in a raid, maybe without a consumable item or something. But if you know you're going to go into a single target situation, or you know you're going to go into PvP, or if you know you're going to go into a Mythic Plus dungeon that has a lot of trash, you can obviously change this around, and you might have 25 different loadouts where, hey, I'm going to use this against caster cleaves in 3v3, or hey, I'm going to use this one in M+, or hey, I'm going to use this one if I know that I'm going into a raid and it's a focus on single target and stuff like that. So there's going to be tons of different builds that you're going to have. And one of the things that I've seen other content creators kind of talk about is like that there's that the talent trees are kind of poorly designed, or that there's a lot of different things in there that you want and you can't get everything. And I think that's intended. It's intended that this is kind of like a meta game where we have to go through here and decide, hey, do I want to take this talent or this talent, and at the top, it's kind of the opposite, where when you look at the top, you have to take Blade of Justice, you have to take Divine Storm, you have to take Art of War. There's no question that you have to take those. You have to take Timely Judgment. You have to take Improved Crusader Strike. You have to take, you don't really have to take High Lord's Judgment, but you kind of have to take all 3 of these here because you want to get down deeper in the trees, right? So you can you get to choose between a few things here or there, but these are the ones at the top that you take. These are all going to be strong talents that you're going to want anyway. I want Blade of Justice to generate an additional holy power. I don't really want Expurgation. That's one of the conduits from Shadowlands that nobody really uses because it's not very good. But maybe depending on the tuning of Blade of Justice, maybe it'll be better. We'll have to see. You're obviously going to take Shield of Vengeance. You have to take High Lord's Judgment because you got to go deeper into here. You have to take Wake of Ashes. I see that Execution Sentence is down here. I don't really like Execution Sentence. I think that on Mythic Plus trash, it's not going to be very good. I think in PvP, you're just going to get kited and you're not going to be able to use it. So I don't think it's all that good. I think you're going to want to take Blade of Wrath. I think here you're going to want to take Imperium Power. Here's Tempest of the Lightbringer. Here's a great example of a talent where if you're not doing M+, you're probably not going to take this talent, but otherwise you could definitely take it. And then over here we have some of these Judgment ones, and I think you're not going to want to take these unless you also plan to take Divine Toll and Divine Resonance, because they synergize so well with it. And I don't really want to take Divine Toll because I like the other options better. But I really want to make the consecration stuff work, but we'll have to see if that is actually going to work. But anyway, I think you're going to take Righteous Verdict. I think you're going to take Sanctification, whether the consecration build works or not. For one reason, because you have to get down here, because I really want to take Ashes to Ashes, but also because it'll give you a really good reason, I think, to press consecration. Right now, it's not really a great reason to press consecration. In most cases, you're going to get enough procs, especially with Empyrean Power and Blade of Wrath. You're going to have enough procs that you probably don't need to press it. However, with Sanctification, I think you're going to want to press it. And maybe with Consecrated Blade, we'll have to see how the points play out. It might be something that you want to take. So down here, you don't necessarily need to take Eye for an Eye or Justicar's Vengeance. I don't know why Justicar's Vengeance is still here. It's not a great talent. I still really like Healing Hands, although Selfless Healer is probably going to be the better pick for PvP, or I'm sorry, for PvE. You're going to want to take Selfless Healer just because it doesn't take up your Holy Power. And then we all have Long Arm of the Law is back, and it's really in a very weakened form. 20% more movement speed for 2 seconds is really minimal. Judgment has a really long cooldown. It has like a 12-second base cooldown. You're going to reduce the cooldown a little bit. I think over here somewhere you can reduce the cooldown a little bit, but it's still just not very good. If I had to pick between that and Hand of Hindrance, I guess in PvE I'd probably take Long Armor of the Law, give you a little bit of a boost, maybe when you need it. Hand of Hindrance is probably not something you're going to use in PvE. So we'll take Long Armor of the Law, and you can see we still have to spend 4 points. There's 4 points that we have to spend down here somewhere to get to the bottom. So I actually think that Ashes to Dust, this is the other set talent, or the tier talent, I think is going to be something that's really good. It gives Art of War a 35% chance to reset the cooldown of Wake of Ashes. So again, you're going to reset the Wake of Ashes. It's probably going to do more damage. It's probably going to outweigh anything that... any other benefits that you have for hitting Blade of Justice, things like Consecrated Blade, which I am going to take because I think that's going to be really good combined with Sanctification, because I think you're just going to be popping those Consecrates. Again, you're going to break CC and stuff, but hopefully that's not a big deal. But there's not going to be a whole lot of... Actually, I do want to take Zeal as well. I like Zeal. I think that getting your auto attacks to occur 30% more faster is going to give you more Blade of Wrath, so I think that's going to be one that you want to take. Calm Before the Storm. Enemies hit by your Divine Storm take 50% more damage from your Consecration. That might be one you want to take in PvE and Mythic Plus. I don't think Last Rites and Deemed Unworthy are ones that I want to take. Obviously, if you're going to take a Divine Toll build, it is going to be one you're going to take. But right now, I have 19 points, so I got to waste a point somewhere. And I'm not going to waste it, but we'll find a place to put it. I think we're going to take Calm Before the Storm. I think that's going to be interesting. 50% more damage for Consecration. We'll see how that goes. And down here, we have to make some hard choices here. So we have 10 more points available. So we can take Virtuous Command, which is actually a little bit nerfed it's nerfed a lot in the damage that it does. However, it lasts a lot longer. It lasts 10 seconds. So Judgment grants your Virtuous Command 10 seconds. So basically, you're going to have really high uptime on Virtuous Command, which is pretty good. But it basically just means that you're going to do 5% more damage as holy damage. So, I mean, it's going to give you a little bit better scaling for Mastery. But otherwise, it's not going to be that good. You're going to have Templar's Vindication here. I actually really like Ashes to Ashes down here. The question I have, though, is that does it really make sense to take 2 stacks of this, two points of this? Because it's possible you're going to get back-to-back Arts of War, and they're gonna kind of overlap. And especially if you wanted to take Seraphim over here. So you want at least 1 point in this, so you're kind of having those Seraphims. I'm going to take 2 points because I want to see if I can also take Final Verdict. Let's see if it's going to let me do that. Okay, it is going to let me do that. So I can take 2 points in Ashes to Ashes and get Final Verdict, and I've got 1 point left, and I'm going to put that point in Avenging Wrath Might. So that's one kind of build you can take, but you can see there's all sorts of other builds, and obviously when you look at kind of simming and stuff, there's going to be sims. Someone's going to be able to tell you, hey, this is exactly the build that you want to play, but hopefully it's balanced in such a way that you'll be able to pick a lot of different talents, and like if you want to play the Judgment build, you can. If you want to play a more Consecrate heavy build, you can. But I kind of like how this plays out. I'm going to have the random kind of consecration procs from Art of War. Those are going to be doing giving me a lot more holy power, and then I'll be able to be spending more damage on final verdicts. Those are going to be giving me more Hammer of Wraths. And this build actually might have like too many, like this might be too GCD locked as far as I'm going to get Empyrean power procs. That requires me to cast Crusader Strike. Am I going to be able to cast Crusader Strike? With all the other procs and things that I'm going to be getting. So I don't really know. We'll have to see how that plays out. So that's kind of how one Ret build could look. There's all sorts of different ways you could play this out, and we'll sort of talk about some other different builds maybe in another video. So again, we talked a little bit about Crusade. I think you're going to want to take Devo Aura here. If you're in PvE, you're probably going to take Lay on Hands. If you're in PvP, it saves you a talent point. You don't need to take Lay on Hands. The new Retribution Aura is kind of interesting. It's not yet implemented, and it's not clear exactly how this is going to work. It says when any party or raid member within 40 yards takes more than 50% of their health and damage, you gain Seraphim for 6 seconds. Cannot occur for more than once every 30 seconds. So that's going to perhaps clash a little bit with Ashes to Ashes. So if it ends up, depending on how this talent works, it might mean that you don't need Ashes to Ashes, and that frees you up to take Divine Toll and Divine Resonance and some other stuff. So we'll have to see how that goes. But I guess my point is it doesn't say how quickly they have to take the 50% of their health. Does it mean that they take it in one chunk? Like it has to be a big boss hit or something like that? Obviously in PvP that's going to be really, really strong, because that probably happens a lot where you take big chunks of damage. And burst and stuff like that. So getting those Seraphim procs is going to be interesting. Again, I hope that Ashes to Ashes and Retribution Aura and those kind of things, hopefully they extend the duration of Seraphim. They don't kind of overlap. I guess we'll have to see how that works. I don't know how that works on live today. So if anybody knows, let me know in the comments how you think that's going to work. But I think in a sort of a normal PvE build, you're probably going to take Lay on Hands. You're probably going to want Blinding Light, just because it gives you access to the rest of this tree. Obviously, you're going to take Avenging Wrath. You're going to take Judgment here. That makes just as Judgment rank 3. It gives you 1 Holy Power. You're going to want that. You're going to want the Judgment causes the target to take 25% increased damage from your next Holy Power. That's a required talent. I believe you're going to want Divine Purpose. You're definitely going to want Blessing of Sack and Blessing of Protection. Those are important utility spells. You're going to want Rebuke for sure. You're going to want Seal of Reprisal 100%. And then from here, you get a choice between Recompense and Sacrifice of the Just. I don't know how exactly these are going to play out. Obviously, for damage-wise, Recompense is going to give you more damage because it's going to save 50% of the damage that you take. That's diverted is kind of gives you bonus damage, so that's kind of cool. For damage-wise, that's going to be good, but for PvP, Sacrifice of the Just might be better. It'll give you a 1-minute recharge on your sacrifice. That'll allow you to not only reduce the damage that somebody else is taking, but then you can also break out of CCs and stuff like that, right? You can sacrifice somebody and it'll break you out of a CC like Polymorph that breaks on damage. So kind of cool there, kind of some cool utility there. One thing that I don't like is that Cleanse Toxins is down here as a talent, and it's buried. It's really buried down here. And if you're taking a Consecrate build like I am, maybe you want Golden Path, maybe you want Seal of Mercy. But that's going to be a really expensive kind of thing to get, because I only need 2 more talent to get access to this bottom stuff, and this is where the really juicy stuff is at the bottom. So I have to spend a lot of talents to get down here. So we'll see what we can do. We'll put the 2 talents there to get us access here. You're definitely going to have to take this talent. It's a mandatory talent. 1-minute reduction on Avenging Wrath. And then down here, you actually can get Unbreakable Spirit. And if we look at the other talents here, Unbreakable Spirit, it used to be you had to choose Eye for an Eye or Cavalier or Unbreakable Spirit. And in Dragonflight, you can take all 3. The way that it's laid out right now, you could go over here and take Eye for an Eye. You can take Cavalier right here, and you can take Unbreakable Spirit. So that's kind of cool. It's going to give you better access to your cooldowns and stuff. So I like that. For 1 talent point, that seems really strong. I think Blessing of Spell Wording is going to be a lock for in probably every situation, unless you're fighting like melee cleaves in PvP, or unless there is some sort of a really strong bleed that you're going to want to be able to bop off. But otherwise, it's going to be really good. I think Sanctified Wrath is an auto lock-in. I think you're going to have a lot of procs otherwise through Retribution Aura, through Ashes to Ashes, that you don't want to take Seraphim also. I also think that it kind of depends, right? Depends on how much holy power generation we get through sanctification, stuff like that. There's going to be a lot of things to play with here. So right now, I still have 8 more talents to use. On this side, you do have access to Dusk and Dawn, and then a buffed version of it, Seal of Order. I don't know if this is something you're necessarily going to want to take. It's just going to depend on how your holy power spending and stuff goes. I don't know that you're going to want to micromanage it to that degree where you actually get this, but it is really strong. It gives you 10% increased damage and healing on your holy power spending abilities, which is really good. And then obviously you get the 6% damage increase and the 4% damage reduction for lasts for 12 seconds through Dusk and Dawn. So it's kind of good. It's just passive, but like I said, it's not going to be something that I don't know that it's worth taking all of these other talents, because some of these don't seem all that good. I'm not wild about the Mad Paragon. I don't think it's that good. Seal of the Crusader is actually really strong. Your auto attacks have a chance to apply a debuff to the target. This is obviously the old Seal of the Crusader, sort of. That's back, even going back to vanilla. It causes you to take 5% more holy damage for 5 seconds. It does have 3 procs per minute, and there's three stacks of it, so it goes up to 15% increased holy damage, which is huge. So I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be worth all these extra talents that you get, but maybe it might be worth it. Obviously, if you're taking a Consecrate build like I am, maybe you're going to want to go down here and take this, because you're going to get access to it. I still have 3 more talents. I think those 3 are probably going to go into Seal of Might. During Avenging Wrath, your mastery is increased by 12%. 12% more mastery, I mean 12% more holy damage. Very strong. But again, I'm losing a lot in here. I'm losing Cleanse Toxins, you know. And in PvP, there's going to be times where you need Cleanse Toxins, you know, against rogues or against Death Knights. But if there's no rogue or Death Knight, then you don't need it. And then again, if I'm taking a really Consecrate heavy build, maybe I want to try to find room in it for Golden Path or Seal of Mercy. I don't really know. It's going to depend on how the on how it's tuned. So that's kind of like my first take on these. I want to do a little bit more research on these. Obviously, I don't have access to Alpha, so I can't really test this stuff. A lot of these are not yet implemented, so there's no way to really test it anyway. So overall, I think the talents look really interesting. There's definitely I think they're better than some of the other talent trees that we've seen. It looks like there was some thought put into the decisions that you're going to make. I do like that we get access to a lot of the overlapping talents that we have right now. You know, I can get Zeal and Righteous Verdict and Execution Sentence. I can get Empyrean Power and Blade of Wrath. I can get Fist of Justice and Blinding Light. I can get all 3 of these. So I like that about it. I like that there's choices, but then there's also getting access to those other things. I think that's going to be important because, remember, there's not going to be Borrowed Power. There's not going to be Conduits. There's not going to be, I guess there could be Legendaries, and there is going to be tier sets, but there's not going to be those Covenant powers that are really a big part of our damage and mitigation, things like that. So, you know, we're not going to have Fleshcraft. We're not going to have, well, if you choose to take Divine Toll, you're going to have Divine Toll, but anyway, that's kind of all I wanted to talk about today. Please be sure to hodge that like button and subscribe for more Ret Paladin videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.